Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and this is the MSI GE65 Raider, a portable 15.6-inch gaming laptop with a 1080p display, a Steelseries keyboard that you can see shining in the background here, a responsive gaming setup, and numerous features that make it interesting. I've been using this for a couple of weeks, and I'm going to talk through the various highlights and lowlights of this device and what it's like to use. However, I will let you know before we get started that this is an engineering sample, so it's not the final product, and I was asked not to do benchmarking on it because it wouldn't be fair test, because the specs that came in this sample are not actually the final release. For example, that has a 2060 RTX graphics card in it, whereas the final product is going to have a 2070. Also, the screen on this only supports 144Hz, whereas the final machine will have a 240Hz, so it's going to be slightly better, which is a good thing because my initial thoughts of this machine are that it's good and fun to play with and pretty capable anyway, and it's going to have even more power when it actually is available to buy. And it will come in two different variants, one of which has a Core i9 9880H CPU, and the other one has a Core i7 9750H. Both of them, as I said, will have an RTX 2070 graphics card. You'll have NVMe SSD storage, which, as you can see, allows it to boot really quickly. So this model that I had came with a 256GB NVMe main drive, but the basic one is going to come with a 512 and then a standard terabyte drive for all your games and everything else. Although obviously if you have a 512GB NVMe as your OS drive, you could probably put some of your favourite games on there anyway, because it won't fill up terribly quickly. Unless you install Red Dead on there, and that'll take up quite a bit of space. As I said, this is a 1080p display. That will be 240Hz refresh rate, so it is pretty nifty. Another highlight is the Steelseries keyboard, which is really hard to do justice to in this video. It has some really nice RGB backlighting and customization options that you can adjust within the Steelseries engine as a separate download. There's also the MSI Dragon Center, which I'll show a bit later on. And it is really hard to do it justice because it actually looks like it's flickering a bit more. I hope none of you have got epilepsy, because it is a bit flickery in the video for some reason. I'm not really sure why, but it looks magnificent in real life. It looks really good, and the customization is per key illumination as well, so you can really set up some nice designs. And it kind of reminded me of the Apex Pro keyboard that I reviewed recently, because it has that level of customization. However, I will note some frustrations with it. It's an American layout, so it's kind of annoying for me as a Brit, in that as a thin enter key, and for some reason the Windows key is on the right hand side rather than the left, which I found really alien. As you can see, you've got the function key on the left that you can press, and then you can get access to things on the right hand side, such as the ability to adjust the key brightness here, and the bottom, the directional keys, the screen brightness and volume. And you can see that they change to a shade of red when they're activated as well, and there's a number of different F keys at the top. You can also switch between other settings. And as said, there's MSI's Dragon Center that allows you to adjust various settings as well. I'll show you a bit later on. In terms of ports, this has a number of ports that you can see here. It has HDMI and Mini-DisplayPort outputs. It also has various USB ports on both sides, audio jacks and Ethernet port as well, so you can plug it in wired, which is something that I did testing it out. And you can see it's fairly understated. Obviously you can turn the Steelseries backlighting off, and there's nothing particularly over the top in terms of the accents and design. Otherwise, this MSI logo on the rear panel does actually light up, but it's quite subtle. It's quite understated as well. It's quite a nice looking laptop, fairly lightweight, nice and thin, and yet it seemed to run pretty well. Didn't get overly hot during testing, and we'll show you the sound levels a bit later on. You can see the venting at the rear, and you'll have noted at the beginning of the video it sucks in cold air from underneath and it blows it out the back on the left hand side, and it seems to keep pretty cool under pressure. Another thing I liked is the lighting on the USB ports on both sides. You can see there's a lot of red accent lighting on there. Note the SD card reader as well. So this machine is basically does it all, has lots of different connection options, and a nice looking keyboard, fast response screen. One area that has let it down is battery life. Obviously you can adjust a lot of different battery settings, both in Windows and within Dragon's On 10 software, but it only got about 2 hours of battery, which is pretty poor, but pretty standard for a thin gaming laptop. Another thing you'll see at the top here is you have 3 buttons. Power button on the right, middle button is a Steelseries button that switches between various default color schemes, and then there's a turbo button that kicks the fans into high speed. Cools things down a bit more, makes a heck of a lot of noise, but it does make quite a considerable difference in the FPS count, and I've seen FPS jump up quite a lot, and I'll show you the difference as well. And the lid closing is nice and pleasant. Design wise, I found this pretty nice looking laptop, comfortable to use, reasonably responsive, loads of ports. I've struggled to find issues with it, to be honest. I think especially once you've got the improved spec inside, it's going to be a little monster. I've been using it for gaming on various different games, and if you stick with me I'll actually show it plugged into a 43-inch 4K monitor that I was reviewing recently to see how it performed under that. Played Cuisine, Call of Duty, Red Dead Redemption, Kingdom Come Deliverance, and all sorts of games to give it a good run around and see how it got on. I found that it performed pretty well. There's nice clear screen. Actually found going from this, funnily enough, 15.6-inch screen, 1080p, to the larger 4K screen, that actually the smaller one was clearer and much more responsive, and probably down to the size and stuff, but obviously a 15.6-inch does makes my eyes ache after a while, but then I'm getting on, I'm pretty old, so maybe younger eyes won't have that issue, and I'm also used to a larger screen. But the fact that it can output to the bigger one gives you the option to connect when you're at home, plug it in and run that. However, putting it out through HDMI or DisplayPort, you don't get the hertz refresh rate. You'll only get 60 hertz, but it can output 4K at 60 hertz, although obviously it's going to depend on the screen. I struggled to get over 40 FPS when outputting to a larger screen, but I'll show you that a bit later on. So as playing, smashing through Cuisine, and as my usual gaming sessions, so I can see how it stands up, and then playing some Red Dead as well. Red Dead looks glorious on here, it is glorious anyway. Turned up most of the graphics settings and was probably getting quite a low FPS. However, it is quite a taxing game. As I said, you have to bear in mind that this isn't the final specs of the machine. I will include the different options in the description to give you an idea of what it will be like, but the one that I had isn't quite as powerful as the final result will be. However, as you can see, although it's hard to do it justice in video, it does look great. It gives really good colour range. Also the viewing angles, you'll note I've captured video from various different angles here, and you can still see the screen nicely, see all the colours, and it shows up well from different angles too, which is really good. It's very responsive and fantastic. I was getting around 30 or 40 FPS on Red Dead though, so not amazing, but it's a laptop and it does well enough. Obviously you can always turn the visuals down. However, in Cuisine Royale I was getting over 100 FPS and it was performing nicely. So if you're running on lower settings or on an older game, then you can make use of that 240 Hz screen, as it will be if you're into CSGO, for example. Then you should be able to push it to that limit. Unfortunately, not something I could test or do a fair test on because it doesn't have the 240 Hz screen. But here you can see a quick idea of the FPS counter and on what you're getting when running around the world. And this is with I said with graphics on Red Dead set pretty high because I like things to be stunning, and personally if you're making the most of a gaming machine then you've got to put it through its tests and make sure you get it. And it was still smooth experience, and it looked great. The speakers aren't too bad either, and one thing I did note is that it doesn't get too hot under pressure. The cooling seems to perform pretty well, especially when playing on the desk. It doesn't get too hot, the keyboard doesn't get hot. I've seen other ones do, or not as hot as other machines. It also doesn't get too noisy, although we'll show the noise in a minute. It doesn't regularly switch to turbo mode unless you choose to do it. You can obviously choose to do that, and if you did, found probably go from 30 or 40 FPS to 50 or 60, maybe a bit more. Here, the sound level meter, just to show you, give you an idea of the volume of the fans when they're going, and it's not too bad. I've seen louder, and it's not that obnoxious. I did find after a while it did get a bit taxing, but if you've got a gaming headset, then obviously you can whack that on and it's not a problem. But during the day, for like office use, standard use, it's not an issue really. So you can get an idea with that turbo mode on what a difference that makes. It goes up into the 60 decibels and upwards. Obviously most of the noise is round the back though, so it's not too bad, but I did find both using the screen and that sound got a bit much after a while. Now, as I said, you can customize things within MSI's Dragon Center software. There are various cool things that you can do with it, one of which is that you can also download an app, and I'll leave a link to that in the description, that allows you to then pair with the Dragon Center software, and you can then control the machine from your phone in a number of ways. It doesn't give you quite as much customization options. So the software itself on the laptop allows you to change battery settings. You can change screen visuals, which means you can have like a blue light filter, a gaming mode, movie mode, and various other things. You can adjust the performance in terms of the fan speed and things like that, and you can see that here as well. So you've got various different profiles where it will switch the fan speeds, true color, sound, and things like that, and you can switch between those profiles on the fly. You can also customize your own ones and set it to the way you want it, and it's an instant connection as well, so it connects over Wi-Fi, and you can then just do it. And pretty minimal interface on the app, doesn't give you as much in the way of customization choices. There's a lot more you can do in the software, so you need both really. But if you want to be able to adjust things without having to alt tab out of a game, then this is a nice little addition, and it's actually one of the best ones I've seen. Something similar on Asus laptops I've tested in the past, but this is much more quick and much more reliable, and it seems to be very nice, well designed. Also, another thing you can do is monitor your system performance, so you can see here how much load things are under as well, which is pretty cool. And you can see the fan speed, the clocks, and also just the sheer load on your processors. And that's pretty cool too, to be able to see that at a glance without having any other software running or having to alt tab out or rely on another screen. So if you want to know what's going on, if there's anything wrong, or if there's low FPS count for some reason, and you can see that there. You can also see just the sheer speed of the fans. So Call of Duty Modern Warfare, another point I need to make that you might have already picked up on is the Activate Windows logo in the bottom right. Engineering sample, they didn't have a legitimate copy of Windows on there or a key to be able to send me to sort that out, and I wasn't going to buy Windows for a machine that I was going to have to return, so just have to ignore that. Glaze over the fact that it doesn't have Windows on it, but it is not the final machine, obviously. Engineering sample just for testing and review purposes, so if you can ignore that through the gameplay footage, I managed to focus on just storming houses and getting the special jobs done. Now, the screen itself, very nice, bezel free, as I said, 1080p. This one's 144Hz, the standard version will be 240Hz, 3 millisecond response time, close to 100% sRGB, and it looks really good, to be fair. It's got anti-glare on it as well, so it looks pretty good all day. I've been using it in bright office and working throughout the day on it. Like I said, I took it into London to work on for a meeting. It's not going to stand out in a meeting room or make people go, what is that? It wasn't too loud. The fans were quiet. They run nice and quiet if you're not doing anything too taxing, so that's not a problem. And then obviously you can come home, turn the Steelseries lighting on and get gaming. The keyboard backlighting is one of the favourite things I've seen, and the addition of having a Steelseries keyboard in another manufacturer's laptop is pretty unusual from what I've seen, and it looks great, and it's great to have that customization. If you're a SteelSeries fan, obviously if you've already got SteelSeries peripherals, you can plug them in, and it's all powered by the SteelSeries engine, so it'll be recognised and you can connect those all up, and then the end result is a nice SteelSeries powered laptop, and it looks great. The downside is that frustrating layout, but partly that's down to it being a US layout and British, so I really don't like certain things like that. Like that small enter key is really annoying. The @ sign was in the wrong place. Windows key on the right, very annoying. But generally otherwise, a brilliant little gaming laptop, a bit of a monster, and it is expensive though. You're looking at around £2,000, $2,000 for the base model, but it does the job. Now here you can see what I was talking about. Put it out to the 43-inch 4K Acer Predator screen, and it still looked good. It handled it well. It's connected via HDMI. Downside, as I said, is you can only get 60 Hz refresh rate this way. You will not get the full experience in the same way you will on a small screen, so you can't get the 240 Hz. And also, if you thought the frame drop was bad on the standard machine, which, like in Red Dead Redemption it is, but in Call of Duty it was okay, once you start putting out to 4K on a big screen, you certainly lose some frames. Got down to around 40 or something. But in other games it did alright actually. I was playing a bit of Wreckfest, just messing about with that, and it responded a bit better and had a decent FPS to it, so it was right. It manages to do well. It's meant to be able to put out to 2 screens as well, because you have HDMI and DisplayPort Mini, so you have the option of powering 2. Not something I was able to try. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Be sure to check out the description to see all the specs. Thanks for watching. This has been the Provoked Prawn. Hope you found this video useful, interesting or hilarious. Be sure to subscribe and check out these other videos, as well as taking a look in the description for links and other information you might find useful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or anything you'd like to see extra about this, and have a great life.